I'm never gonna forgive Rockstar for not giving us a DLC like this for GTA 5.
Those bastards.
The second of our duology for the GTA 4 DLCs sees us explore the more glamorous side of Liberty City with the Ballad of Gay Tony. That's right, we got another standalone expansion here. But unlike The Lost and the Damned, before doing research for this marathon, I was actually a little bit more familiar with this expansion. Yeah, I remember seeing commercials for this one way back in the day, even though I didn't end up owning GTA 4 for myself until I built my PC back in 2018. I'm assuming it stuck out in my mind because it was 2009 and my 13-year-old brain saw the word gay and probably giggled to myself. But don't worry guys, I am much more mature now, I promise. Just as long as you ignore this, and this. Now until this video, I've never actually had an opportunity to play this expansion for myself, which is a damn shame because even upon release, I heard people talking about how good it was, which you can see from the scores being in the high 80s on Metacritic at the time. And after playing it for myself, I'm not only inclined to agree with this, but I would also go on the record as saying that I think that the Ballad of Gay Tony is just as good as the base game of GTA 4, and in some ways, it's even better than it. I kind of assumed I was really going to like this one since I heard nothing but great things about it, but in many ways, this DLC captures a lot of the stuff that I loved about the series that didn't really show up too often in 4. This expansion is pretty short, keep in mind, only lasting around 6 to 10 hours, but it really doesn't waste any of its time since I found the story engaging, the mission design varied, the side activities plentiful, and the vibe to be something completely different. One small thing I will say before I get this video started, I played this on PC, and let me tell you, this was the worst that GTA 4 has been in regards to its performance. There were multiple times that my frame rate would tank, and even worse is when I would occasionally get stuck on a never-ending loading screen after beginning certain missions. I was able to fix it by changing my resolution settings, and I know this isn't an issue that everyone experiences, but just be warned that it's certainly possible when playing through this content. It's kind of an annoying blemish on what's otherwise a really fun experience, but, you know, anyways. We got a lot to talk about today, so without further ado, this is my review for Grand Theft Auto 4, The Ballad of Gay Tony. So I think the thing that surprised me the most with my time with The Ballad of Gay Tony was actually the story itself. Now, obviously there have been GTA stories that I've enjoyed in the past, such as with the likes of San Andreas, as well as the base game of 4, but seeing as how I thought that the Lost and Damned expansion was a decent distraction, but didn't really have enough time to cook, I more or less expected the same for this. But no, honestly, this is a surprisingly good story that's filled with funny dialogue, interesting characters, and has a bit of something to say, too. This episode sees us play as Luis Lopez, a former gang member and drug dealer who has been forming a bond with our other lead, Anthony Price, better known as Gay Tony. Tony is a wealthy nightclub owner that we've heard bits and pieces about throughout the story of 4, and he takes the center stage here as pretty much the plot revolves around this man's spiral into not only ruining his career, but potentially being so destructive that he gets everyone close to him killed along the way. This is essentially shown off as the story progresses through his drug use, the friction between him and various mob-affiliated families, and ultimately a diamond smuggling scheme that goes horribly wrong, which gets the Russian mafia on their ass. It's actually not too different from how the beginning of GTA 4 takes place, with Roman constantly dragging Nico into his problems. However, make no mistake about it, Tony isn't just the rich and gay version of Roman. No, he's actually a pretty smart guy with a ton of charisma, so seeing him make these kind of shitty decisions kind of has a different impact on you. With Roman, you know he's the lovable dumbass, you want to ruffle up his hair, pat him on the back, and send him on his way. What can you expect? Tony, on the other hand, is a very successful businessman and entrepreneur. Even though he claims to have just gotten lucky, you can tell that he's actually an incredibly influential person underneath it all, so seeing him constantly whacked out of his mind or make dumb decisions actually makes you feel really disappointed in him. Like, you just want to smack him upside the head so he gets his shit back together, which, I mean, hey, you know, Luis is more than willing to do on a couple of occasions. The relationship between Luis and Tony is put to the test here, and thankfully, Rockstar doesn't take the approach that you think that they might with having a gay character interact with a straight character, but instead has Tony act more as a mentor or a father-like figure to Luis, which works well for him since he lacked that sort of relationship earlier on in his life. It's because of that, it makes moments like at the end of the game where the two are just having a conversation in the park even more powerful. It also makes for a pretty happy ending too, in all honesty. Yeah, it's probably no surprise to you guys, but Gay Tony single-handedly makes this story as special as what it was. And honestly, he's got my vote for a top 5 GTA character of all time. I think Rockstar deserves a ton of praise here for making an LGBTQ+ character back in 2009 that isn't just a complete stereotype or played for cheap laughs, especially because some of their earlier characters aren't exactly put in the best light with a modern context, let's just say that. And make no mistake about it, they definitely do let a lot of homophobia fly in this expansion still, often throwing out the F word in a ton of this game's cutscenes. So if stuff like that bothers you, you might want to steer clear of this one because they definitely use it. Like a lot. Getting back on track, outside of Luis's relationship with Tony, he also has relationships with a number of side characters, who I think make up a pretty good supporting cast. These can essentially be divided up into two groups. The first group of characters are characters that come from wealth that you'll do jobs for, such as Ray Bulgarian, the crazy Russian we saw in the base game, or Maury Kibitz, who is Brucey's older brother and the reason why he acts the way he does because Jesus Christ, just fucking look at this guy. The best of these side characters has to be Yusef though. To describe Yusef's character is simple. Imagine what Roman would be like if he essentially had like a limitless source of money. Yeah, he's probably one of the most entertaining side characters that we've got here, which is good because we get to see a lot of him. And I do mean a lot of him because, dear God, is there a word for the opposite of fan service? Because we definitely need one here. The other group are Luis's friends and mom, which he has an ever-fading relationship with since he's been working with Tony. It actually provides a pretty interesting setup with it looking like Luis is torn in the middle of two different worlds, and they kind of do a little bit with that, but if I'm being honest here, I think that part of the story could have been fleshed out a bit more. Part of that problem really comes down to our main character, Luis. He is just a complete and utter bore, I'm sorry. Like, we constantly get told that he has this fucked up past and he has this really crazy temper, but I don't think I've ever seen him raise his voice or really show any sort of emotion. In every situation, he kind of just says, "Take it easy, bro," and that's his main contribution to whatever another character throws at him.
Whoa, just take it easy, man.
He's honestly the only real issue I have with an otherwise really fun story. Outside of the characters themselves, there's another reason that I really like the story that the Ballad of Gay Tony brings here, and that's because it has a completely different vibe from the base game of 4. GTA 4 was all about the bleak atmosphere with its muted color palettes and nihilistic undertones in the story. The Ballad of Gay Tony, on the other hand, brings in the bright neon colors and dancey energetic music that you'd expect from the nightclub scene. Instead of having a feeling of not being able to change the greater scope of the culture, we get a much more focused story that is mostly played for laughs and also has a surprisingly happy ending to the whole thing. This was kind of shocking to me, but honestly, a really nice change of pace to help differentiate things from the main game. That's not to say that this game is completely removed from what happened in 4 though. Much like The Lost and Damned, there will be a few points where you'll intersect with both the main game and the previous expansion with overlapping events. These come during the initial diamond deal, during the encounter in the museum, and finally when we go to exchange the diamonds for Gracie. I'm not sure why the diamond subplot seemed to be the thing to tie all 3 of these stories together, but it's nice that we do get some closure on that, even if it's mostly played up as being a joke. There's not too much else to say here. Minus Luis having the same amount of character as a cardboard box, this game has a super fun, lighthearted story that still provides a very interesting perspective on what it might be to be Gay Tony's best friend as he gradually becomes an even bigger hot mess. This is pretty damn good, and I have to say, a lot of this energy bleeds over into the gameplay too, which, yeah, let's get into that. So we spent a lot longer on the story section of this game than I originally thought we were going to, but the gameplay portion I'll cut up into a few smaller chunks for you guys. When it comes to general gameplay, not too much has really changed from the Formula 4 as you probably expected. Honestly, the biggest and most notable difference is actually the ability to replay missions, which immediately makes me wrong from what I said in my last video. Hell, you can even replay the missions in this game now if you select the option to in your safe house, which was such a surprising feature since no other game in the series has done that before or since. Like, that's kind of a no-brainer to me, right? Thanks, Grand Theft Auto. Thank you for that. Ah well, at least you get the option this time around. But let me tell you, these missions are easily some of my favorite out of the entire package of GTA 4, if I'm being honest with you guys. This is for 2 key reasons. A lot of the things you do are unique, and some of them go way over the top. Let me give you some examples. There's a mission where you'll be uncoupling a car off of a moving train. There's a mission where you jump in the back of an airplane after you chase it down on top of a motorcycle. There is a mission where you chase down an attack helicopter and use it to blow up a fucking yacht. Alright, that mission kinda sucks because the helicopter controls are bullshit, but you get my point. Yeah, everything here feels like it's straight out of an action movie. It's so over the top, so entertaining. I just fucking love it. It's great. Like, a lot of these missions you would just simply not find in the base game. Like, look at this one where you do a car chase on top of some golf carts. You just wouldn't see this shit outside of this expansion, and it's fucking awesome. You also get a scorecard after completing these missions now for some optional objectives, which I don't think really give you too much of a reward outside of maybe like a Steam achievement or something, but hey, they're here. There are a decent amount of other rewards you get throughout the story, such as a gold-plated car and a golden Uzi from Yusef, which, speaking of guns and cars, you can definitely expect a lot of new additions on this front, with a bunch of new luxury vehicles to drive around in, and some of the most lethal weapons we've seen in the series, with the inclusion of sticky bombs, an LMG, and a shotgun with explosive rounds, which yes, it's just as wild as it sounds. Are you seeing this shit? You can now pick up these new weapons and vehicles by phoning some of your new allies to deliver them to your location, much like how you could in The Lost and Damned. So while all this new stuff is great, I think the big additions here really come with all the optional side content this expansion really brings this time around. You got a good portion of that with The Lost and Damned, but I think the Ballad of Gay Tony really eclipses it here. So yeah, let's take a look at a few of those things real quick. Throughout the main story of the Ballad of Gay Tony, you will be given occasional missions that serve as tutorials for one of the game's many side activities. These are divided up into drug wars, triathlons, managing the nightclub, participating in underground cage fighting, and finally base jumping. So let's run right down the list. Starting with the drug wars, you might assume by the name that this might be a similar system to the gang wars in San Andreas, or maybe it has something to do with the drug areas that we saw in Chinatown Wars, but that's unfortunately not the case here. This is pretty much just a series of missions where you accompany Luis's friends as he chases down vehicles filled with drugs, before stealing them and bringing back to a certain location. Pretty simple, it had some fun dialogue between Luis and his old friends, gets you some extra cash, can't really complain here. Next is the triathlon, and this is a pretty easy thing to get. It's a 3-part race consisting of parachuting, driving a boat, and then getting a land vehicle. Not much else to say here. Then comes the nightclub management, which might actually be the most underutilized out of all of these. You essentially switch into this middle management gear and just stand around and wait for things to happen. Riveting. If you see the occasional disturbance, you go stop it. I don't know, man. Sometimes you get little side objectives where you need to go outside of the club and do things, but that's about it here. This is kind of a shame, since I think there's a lot of opportunity for a side activity like this, but you know, it is what it is. Next is the underground cage fighting, which, given how much I said I didn't like GTA 4 style of melee combat, you might think I absolutely hated. Well, let me tell you, that isn't actually the case here. I only kinda hated it. Yeah, these just consist of a series of fights inside of a cage that eventually progress to some people bringing in weapons to try to kill you. This kind of means fuck all though, and you can simply dodge and counter nearly everything that they throw at you. Yeah, parry this, you filthy casual. Finally, there's the base jumping, my personal favorite of the side activities. You essentially get put to a high elevation, like at the top of a building or a helicopter or something, and then you parachute down to either land on a target or inside of another vehicle. Simple, no frills, just a short little burst of adrenaline. It's some good stuff. These activities are dotted all over the map, so they really do extend the potential playtime here, but there also exists a number of even smaller minigames that provide even more content to try out. We'll do another rapid fire round of these minigames so we can get our way to the conclusion. So while a few minigames such as air hockey make their return here, I kind of got my fill of that with the last expansion, so I'm mainly going to be focusing on what's new here. First, there is a champagne popping minigame, which I actually had to go out of my way to find since it's tucked away in the VIP area of the club that you help manage. You basically just jerk off this champagne bottle and then rotate the stick to drink as much as you can. Except no matter how fast or how slow I was rotating the stick, I could just not get a feel for how to actually do this, and I lost almost every single time. Bad luck, I guess. There's another minigame in the club that works a little bit better though, and that's the dancing. You essentially flick the stick in time with the beat, and then occasionally hold down some buttons as they appear on screen. It's really that simple. Though I have to say, I oftentimes had to tune out the music completely and go with the rhythm on this little icon here, since I found that they don't sync up the greatest. That being said, you do get quite the reward if you pass this minigame. You know, as soon as they figure out how to get through the door.
Eventually.
Ah, there we go. And if you think walking into this bathroom was an awkward and difficult thing to do, just wait until you see the sex. Last but not least, we have the driving range. Kind of similar how it was in Vice City stories, where you get to pick your shot and try to get as close to hitting the flag as possible. This is probably the most consistent and fun out of the 3 minigames, so yeah, not bad here. Of course, there also exists some new additions to the online multiplayer, but like I said, I'm playing the PC version of this game. You can't play the multiplayer unless you're using a mod, so I'm not really giving it too much attention here. Which, based off a few of the comments that I've seen in the last couple videos, maybe I should, if you guys have been talking pretty highly about GTA 4's multiplayer. So, hey, maybe that's a video for somewhere down the line, who knows. Along with Red Dead Redemption's Undead Nightmare, the Ballad of Gay Tony for a long time was held up as the gold standard for how to do a single-player DLC in a Rockstar title. After playing it for myself, I 100% agree with this, which is a good and a bad thing, because while I had a kick-ass time with this DLC, I can't help but think how good a potential GTA 5 or Red Dead 2 single-player expansion could have really been. This DLC, while so different from what the base game of GTA 4 provided, is just as good as what I saw there. I love the new emphasis on a more lighthearted story. The mission variety here is fantastic, the side content is plentiful, and Gay Tony is a top 5 GTA character, don't at me. Yeah, Luis might be the worst GTA protagonist in the 3D game, and yes, he's worse than Claude, come fight me. And yeah, they definitely do have a good amount of writing that hasn't aged well in the slightest. And yeah, this expansion had quite a few technical issues for me, but overall, those all had a pretty small impact to my enjoyment here. This is a great DLC, and easily one of the best pieces of content you can play if you've ever been interested in playing anything from the GTA series before. Give it a try if you haven't played it. I don't think you'll regret this one. That's all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching. What was your favorite memory of Grand Theft Auto 4, The Ballad of Gay Tony? Please be sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And hey, if you enjoyed today's video, maybe consider giving it a like and subscribing. Thank you guys again. I'll catch you in the next video.